Logan, if you have a few more minutes to join us, we'd like to ask you some questions called the intersection. They're a little bit more personal, questions about the way you view the world. So, Logan, is there one person, living or dead, who you'd want to interview? And if so, why?
Genghis Khan. Because when you look at it, I mean, my degree was actually in history. If you look at one person that infected the world in terms of velocity, as horrific as Genghis Khan in the style of his leadership, it'd really be interesting to see what he was like personally, because the Mongols were historic in every way imaginable when you look at the history of data. So it would be interesting to see what he was like personally, because you have to be just a very unique person to do that kind of damage around the world.
Anyone living?
Personally, this is just for me because it was always Magic Johnson. Growing up, I was a basketball player growing up. I was a high school basketball coach before I got into finance. He was such an integral part of my life just because of his leadership skills. And it was a real turning point when I followed Magic and realized that what it meant to be a leader and what it meant to always be positive for the people around you. Because when you take that role, and it would just be wonderful just sitting down and chatting with him and just going over all the stuff that he's gone through on the basketball front and the personal front.
So, are there any books that have changed your outlook on the world, the way that you see your profession, and the way that you see things more broadly?
No, there's not been any books. I am such a chart guy that, the way my mind works is that numbers are more valuable to me than reading words. Numbers are, and I believe this, numbers are the closest thing we have to the handwriting of God. So looking at data in itself is more impactful for me than any book, because it tells me the story in a more proficient way where a human being can interpret history or an event with their own bias. So charts, of course.
That's a great answer. So talking of breakthroughs, and are there any key successes or experiences in your life that you think of as a tipping point in your career?
Really, for me, was being a high school basketball coach at age 18. Mm-hmm. I was kind of like an old soul, but general leader anyway. And when you get to have a leadership role at such a young age, and I was like the baby of my high school class too. So I'm literally coaching kids that I'm not too much older on. You learn the aspect of what it means to be a leader and how you need to always 24/7 show that kind of class, show that kind of positive attitude, avoid negativity and the dark aspects of humanity. And at age 18, and I only did it for 5 years, having people look up to you that were young kids, and then you see them grow up, you realize that every single day you need to have that mindset with yourself. And coaching high school basketball at such a young age taught me that, because what you teach kids or what you tell people, it's going to follow you for the rest of your life. And now a lot of my kids are grown up and they have kids of their own, and having them converse, God, you're always so positive, and I always remember, you always made us try to work hard and be your best. That to me was the tipping point, because I learned it at a very young age, and use that throughout the rest of your life.
So conversely, have you had any key failures that really made you reappraise or reevaluate your life, that set you on a different trajectory?
Yes, the financial crisis. Faith in humanity can be blinding. And back then, just seeing the greed and what was going on, and, not doing enough to try to spread the word was my failure back then. And we didn't have, I wasn't even in financial blogging, but I learned from that to always make sure that humans are greedy always, and no matter what it is, the history of humanity has shown us that when money is involved and speculation is involved, societies can go to that very quickly. And one of the reasons I wanted to write, be a financial blogger, was to make sure that lending never eases ever again. And in fact, I've always taken that stance, and I've written many articles throughout the last 10 years that tight lending is a perpetuation myth. There's nothing, we have no tight lending in America. We have actually still, even today, very liberal lending standards. Because if you facilitate debt and speculation and money, it could turn a society apart like this. And that's what the history of the world has shown us, that when money is involved and speculation involves, people jump in. And always, the failure of not reading that in terms of getting out there and trying to explain that this is not a good thing haunts me to this day. And that's why for the rest of my life, I'm always going to focus on making sure that lending is adequate and safe, and to go against any single person that tries to facilitate debt speculation for housing, because that is something that is so impactful for any economy and for any household.
And finally, what belief do you hold that is the most controversial opinion in your professional life?
That the U.S. economy is the most prolific economy in the history of the world, and that a lot of these takes on the U.S. economy are more ideological based. If you look at the history of data, if you look at the history of demographics, inflation, everything, the U.S. economy has been able to do such wonderful things. And because the world has made so much progress in the last 200 years, that if you look at the history of the world and how bad things used to be, how hard things used to be in the days, the U.S. economy and just generally the progress the world has made has been a miracle, especially in the last 200 years. So I myself is always to kind of go after the extreme right and left, is kind of say, listen, things used to be a lot worse, 100, 200 years ago today. So let's put things in perspective. And I always get attacked on that front. And I expect that to be the case to the very last day I live.